Hi everybody, I'm Bay Forrest with Focus Ministries, and today we're going to look at our last session on lessons with horses. If you've been following any of the other ones, you'll remember that in our first session together, we looked at the importance of trusting God and submitting to Him, staying close to the Master. And that's the best place we can be is whenever we trust, or as it tells us in Proverbs, to batak, to put our head down and submit. The second session was on trusting God's provision and His timing. In the middle of all of this coronavirus stuff that we've been going through, and sometimes a timeout is not bad. And learning to not forget our first love, as it tells us in Revelation, because Jesus said, the one thing I have against you is you forgot your first love. And the importance of us just saying, God, it's okay. If I need a time out to spend some more time with you and get to know you better, that's good too. So we looked at that one in our second session, and then finally we looked at God's boundaries or protection in our life, those fences that He gives us to keep us safe. And we looked at Him being our shepherd or our provider, and that the safest and best place for us to be provided for is where God puts us, knowing that He takes care of us as the good shepherd. Now today, we're going to look at the rewards of doing things God's way. And to do so, it reminds me of the story of Saul turned Paul, the Apostle Paul. Remember when he was Saul and he was persecuting Christians and he was on the road to Damascus? And as he was on that road, he was headed to kill Christians. He hated what Christians were doing, and he thought he was honoring God, but he just was missing completely the point of what God had for him. And God had to get his attention, and remember, God knocked him off of a horse. And He knocked him off that horse and temporarily blinded him. And remember the words that God said to, Jesus spoke to Saul? He said, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you kicking against the goad? I love the way that the picture, what it shows, because kicking against the goad, a goad was a sharp stick that you used with oxen to poke them, to make them do what they're supposed to do if they weren't doing the right thing. They didn't use the stick unless they had to, but if necessary, they would poke that oxen with that sharp stick. And Jesus said, why do you keep kicking against the goad? I got better plans for you. And that's what I want us to think about is if we'll do it God's way, He's got great plans for our lives. It tells us in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 that we looked at before, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't count on your own understanding. In all your ways look to Him, and He will direct your paths. But then I also like Jeremiah 29, verses 11 through 13. And I know everybody likes Jeremiah 29, 11 because it says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And that all sounds good, and it's true, and God has good plans for us, and He has hope and a great future for us. But I love 12 and 13 that goes on and says, in those days, what days? The tough times, when things aren't going great. Right now, we're going through some pretty hard times. And God says, in those days when things aren't all going really great, He says, if you'll seek me with all your heart, He says, I'm listening and you'll find me. He says, in those days when you pray, I'm listening, and if you'll seek me with all your heart, you'll find me. I think that's really important for us to know that, because when He says, if you'll seek me with all your heart, you'll find me, what He's saying is, listen and I'll show you the right way. I'll show you where to go. I'll show you how to do things in a way that brings honor and glory to me and allows you to do what you were created for. Now, Walker here, he was bred and created to bring pleasure to the Master, and boy does he. He's a big old smooth horse for me to ride, and I really enjoy time with him. And the same thing is true for us with God. We were created to bring glory, honor, and pleasure to God. And the only way we can bring Him pleasure is when we do it His way, when we submit and say, God, I don't want to do it my way, I want to do it your way. But here's the amazing thing. He has plans for us, good plans, so it brings us pleasure and joy too. So Walker here has been real patient, waiting, because he knows where we're headed. You haven't been able to see where I'm getting ready to take him. We're out in National Forest behind our place, and this is his favorite place to run. Walker loves to run. His name is General Walker, and this guy takes off. And I like to run too. I enjoy it. So it's something that me as the master and him together, we get to do it together and have fun together. And that's what I want you to think about as we ride off at this last part of this video. I want you to think about what it'll be like if you'll choose to do it God's way, bring him glory, honor, and pleasure, which brings you pleasure as well, and we both get joy when that happens. It brings joy to God that we're doing it his way, and we get the joy of knowing we're pleasing him with the way that we live our life. So I'm going to take off with Walker here, and hopefully you'll remember the importance of submitting and then enjoying what he has. And I would challenge you, let's make sure that we're riding with Jesus. Come on, Walker, let's go.